So the first thing that I think we need to talk about if you are considering developing a product by yourself is side project versus startup. So there are two ways that you can build something. You can either do it in evenings and weekends, spare time when you're not at your job, and just hope you can get something out to market before you burn out completely. Or you can put away money, build up some savings, try and find some way of getting enough money that you can quit your job and spend 3 months or 6 months or a year building your minimum viable product and trying to get that to market. Both approaches are valid. If you can do the startup approach, if you can bootstrap and just make a clean break and dedicate time to it, then that is a better way to approach this, simply because, well, there are two things. One, you get more time and you are less likely to burn yourself out, and you're less likely to impact your performance at your day job as well. But also, if you are in startup mode, then the hunger, this must succeed or I will have to go and find another job and then things will not be great, is a real motivator for getting on with your project and getting things done. Quick note on the side project side of things, make sure that you check your contract with your current employer or your current customer if you're a contractor. Some employment contracts actually have clauses in them that say that any code you write while you are employed by that company belongs to that company. So you could spend a year building an amazing product and putting it out there, and then your company could go, actually, we own that. So make sure you've sorted that one out first. Also, make sure you're writing it on your own equipment. Don't use any work hardware or time or anything for anything that will give your company any kind of claim over your product. You need to avoid. So we're going to go through a few different approaches here, and most of them are the hats that you wear while you're building a solo product. But first off, we need to talk about time, and this applies whether you're going the side project route or the startup route. And the most important thing, and this is like the most important thing for any of this before we start talking about any of the other stuff, is you have to build a routine. So you have to say, I am going to work on this at these times, and put it in your calendar or set alarms or whatever it might be. And make sure that you stick to that routine as much as possible. If you just go, I will work on it when I feel like it, trust me, you will never feel like it. Whereas if you build a routine and you sit down and you start, certainly I find that if I've set sort of 3 hours, it'll be 4 or 5 hours later and I'll go, oh, I should really stop and go and get some food or wind down before I go to bed or something. Oh, so I forgot to say, so the Visual ReCode model that I'm using it's 50-50 side project and startup. So I do freelance work to build money up, and then I take time and I spend it working entirely on ReCode, but I'm still working on it in spare time while I'm doing the contracting work. So it's a 50-50 model. So yes, build a routine and put the project time in your calendar so that you don't accidentally book other things in at the time that you're supposed to be working on the project. Record how long you have spent doing what it is that you're doing. So if you say, oh, I think this feature is going to take me 4 hours, if you record the time that it took you to build that feature, then if it took 8 hours, then you can use that to feed back in to your estimates for the next feature that you're going to add. A lot of this is also true for when you're working as part of a team or working on other people's products, but it's more important when it's your thing that you're building. Set deadlines. So say I will have this complete by this point. I will release a beta on this date. I will release a release candidate on this date. I am aiming to release something on the next date. So for Visual ReCode, my target is that the next big feature release is going to be at the same time as the .NET 5 release in November. So I've got a hard deadline, and I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I need to add into it by then. But if you don't set deadlines, if it's just when it's ready, then you'll end up just not releasing anything and never hitting any of your milestones. And most importantly, don't work too hard. Do not just work 8 hours at a day job and then 8 hours in the evening and then go to bed and wake up the next morning and do it again and then work all weekend. You will burn out. The younger you are, the longer it will take. But once you've burned out once, you will never ever want to do it again. So as well as setting deadlines and setting time in your calendar and everything, set time when you're just going to kick back and watch Netflix or play video games or spend time with your family. I spent 2 hours last night playing Untitled Goose Game multiplayer with my son, which was fantastic. And then today I'm kind of like, oh, I want to work on my project. So yes, it is important to be kind to yourself and don't work too hard. If you are doing the side project approach, then take time off your day job whenever you can. And if it needs to be unpaid time, if you say, I need to take 2 weeks unpaid leave, even if you have to lie and say it's because grandma's going to the International Space Station and you have to go to Kazakhstan and watch her do the takeoff, then that's fine. But yes, if you can set aside a week or 2 weeks solid work on your project, you will make more progress in that week than you would in a month of working on it part-time. So with that, time management, let's talk about multiple role disorder, because when it's just you and it's your product, it's very easy to think, oh, I just need to code it and do stuff, but that's not true. You are going to end up wearing so many hats. So the first hat you're going to wear is product manager. And that means that you are going to be one of the people that you hate. But you have to be one of the people that you hate because it turns out that actually they do a really important job and it's very, very hard to succeed without them. And product managers are actually really useful and lovely people. So you are going to be your own product manager. It's up to you what goes in. It's up to you what features you have. And so that means that you have to understand some of the product manager roles. So my basic tips for when you're wearing your product manager hat are: minimum means minimum. So when they say minimum viable product, if you've got something that you think could help even just 10 people in the world, then publish it, put it out there. Get those 10 people to use it and tell you what they think about it. It can be you can call it a beta, you can call it a preview, you can call it an early access program, you can call it what you like. But as soon as you have something that is even remotely useful in any form at all, then you should be shipping that and putting that out there and starting to get feedback and starting to get people using it and talking about it and thinking about it. On a similar note, build complete features. So when we build big, complicated products, there's a tendency to build sort of the foundations, and we build foundations for the product, and then we build features on top of that, and you're building up, yes, a very sort of solid framework and application to put things into, but it can take a lot longer when you're doing that to actually provide a single complete feature that works end to end. It's much better to build a narrow slice of functionality for that minimum viable product. So only what you need in order to get something that somebody will find useful, and then complete that feature, and then start another single feature and complete that one. And as you're going along, you can extract various bits out of the features and refactor them into shared components and shared libraries and build the foundation as you go, but build in vertical slices of product and ship complete features one after the other. And focus on that feature. Don't get distracted. Don't think to yourself, oh, hang on a moment, I need file storage in the cloud. I'm going to write a microservice that does file storage in the cloud, and then I'm going to deploy that into a Kubernetes cloud. No. File storage, if it is file storage in the cloud, that's fine. Import Azure.blob.storage or AWS.S3 or whatever it is, and just the minimum thing that could possibly work. Focus on the product, focus on the features, get the features done. Don't over-engineer everything, because you are wearing your product manager hat, and your product manager is going, where is my product? Where is my feature? When are we shipping? And you have to have that voice in your head. I'm quite lucky, I'm married, so I have that voice in my head, and I have my wife, which helps a lot, actually. And if you do have somebody in your life who you can say, I'm building this feature and I'm going to ship it on this date, and then get them to just kind of go, have you built it yet? Is it finished yet? And then remember that you asked them to do that, and don't kill them. Very important, don't kill them. The next hat you are going to wear is project manager. So this is completely different. So product manager is what are we building? Why are we building it? When are we shipping it? Your project manager is how are we organizing? So a lot of this feeds back into that time stuff that we already talked about. But you are going to have to be your project manager. It really, after 30 years of professional software development, it really pains me to say this, but actually project managers are useful as well. Sorry. Yeah, but they are. So when you are project managing your solo product development, manage yourself as if you were a team. So imagine that you are a herd of cats, and that you are responsible for making this herd of cats actually ship something. So you need to do all the things that a project manager would do if he was running a team, in order to coordinate them and get them pushing towards the same end goal. Make a task board. It may just be you may have it all in your head, you may know exactly what you are going to do, but if you make a task board, whether it's a physical task board or Trello or GitHub or Azure DevOps or whatever it might be, it gets you thinking, how can I break this task down into smaller tasks? And if you try and break your tasks down, if you're working full-time on this, try and break it down to things that you can complete in a day. If you're working in the evenings and weekends, then try and break it down to things that you can complete in however long you've allocated. So if you're saying, I'm going to spend 3 hours of an evening, 3 evenings a week, and then I'm going to spend one of my weekend days. So try and break your tasks down into tasks that take 3 hours and tasks that can be done in 1 day at the weekend. And then move them across the board and use them to track your progress, even though it's just you. Do your estimates. So the nice thing about solo product development is that you always win planning poker. But whether you do story points 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, or whether you do, I think this is going to take this many hours, or t-shirt sizes, whatever it is, whichever is your favorite task board estimating style that you've ever used, do that for your solo product as well. So that you can look at something and go, okay, so product manager, now the project manager can talk to the product manager and say, well, all the tasks that add up to that feature that we can then ship look like they're going to take this long, so I can set that deadline for myself. So it all feeds back into that idea of setting deadlines and shipping features. And again, keep records of what you've done. I keep a handwritten journal of the things that I've achieved in a week and things that have come up that need to be fed back into. If you just scribble those down on a notepad or on OneNote or something like that, and then once a week you can review and you can say, okay, so I made a note there that I need to do this, and then you can update the task board for the next week to help yourself organize yourself more effectively. And yeah, it's also extremely useful when it comes to pricing, which we can talk about later. Knowing how long you've spent on something precisely really helps you to consider what it might be worth. So that's the project manager. Then there's the programmer bit, which I don't know about you, but for me, this is the fun bit. This is the bit that I like doing. But some important notes for solo product programming. Most important one, your prototype does not become your product. You do not build a prototype, get it to work, and then add bits onto it to turn it into a full product. You build a prototype and you get it to work, and then you put it to one side and you use the things that you learned while building that prototype to build a product from scratch. If there's a particularly gnarly algorithm in there that you really like, and then you can copy and paste that into your actual product code. But do not try and turn your prototype dirty, nasty, hacky, possibly test-driven, but still horrible code. You do not want that muddying up your product code at any point in the future. Build it, show that it works, and then start again and build it clean, and you will thank yourself and me later. On a similar note, clean code and comments still matter. You might think, nobody else is ever going to look at this. I don't care. I'm not going to put comments in my code to explain why I'm doing things. I'm not going to worry about how clean my code is. It doesn't matter. Nobody's ever going to see it. It does matter, because you in 6 months are going to see it. And if you haven't kept it clean, and if you haven't put comments in, you're going to be looking at it and going, what idiot wrote this? Partly because you will be a better programmer in 6 months than you were when you wrote it. And partly because there's an awful lot of code in this thing and you cannot possibly keep all of it in your head. So clean code and still putting comments in, not insane comments going get a thing from the database, but somewhere, if you're doing something like formatting a string a particular way, put a note in to say this is why this string is formatted this way, that sort of thing. I'm currently doing a bit of contract work to make some extra money and working on some code that has no comments, and where it's an ASP.NET Web Forms project, and most of the state is stored in memory session in tuples. And so there are references to files that are stored as a tuple of int, string, string, and there are no comments. And yeah, I don't know. The only way you can find out what's in there is to start the application and debug it and set a breakpoint. So yes, clean code and comments still matter, even when it's just you. Also, run your source control as though other people were working on the project. So once you've got your initial product set, and particularly after you've shipped anything, then you want to be doing all your work on a develop branch, and you want to be doing pull requests to merge it into your main branch for your releases. Working like that, apart from anything else, if you go down rabbit holes, it's a fantastic way to get back out of the rabbit hole, because you can just delete the branch and go back to the last time you knew something was good. So yes, if you're using GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket, then you have your main branch, you have your develop branch, and then you have your feature branches, and you work on your feature branches and you merge them onto develop, and then run continuous integration against develop, and then merge into master only when you want to release something. You have to do the boring stuff. This is really annoying, but you can't rely on other programmers to come along and do the validation and do the the security things and the authentication system and all the boring things that we as genius visionary programmers just don't have time for, because we're too important reinventing the world. And yeah, no, you have to do everything. So the best advice I can give here is do an hour of boring stuff and then reward yourself with a couple of hours of cool stuff. And I do a lot of this. If I do this thing I don't want to do, I will reward myself with something I do want to do. And so for the boring stuff, it's usually do that, and then you can work on this, which is going to be fun. Avoid rabbit holes. When it's just you can't afford to lose a week trying to get something to work and yak shaving and going down a rabbit hole when you need to be building something and shipping your product. So if you are spending a lot of time on something and you have no idea what's going wrong, then stand back, look at it and go, is there any way I can just use a software as a service? So, you know, if identity server's causing you problems, could you use Auth0 or Azure B2B or something like that, or Okta? If a particular software as a service is causing a problem, then maybe just look at switching to another one. But yes, the last thing you want to do is lose an entire week to a particularly knotty problem when there was a quick way of solving it just by switching to a different library or tool or service or something like that. And on that note, remember that even for bootstrapping startups, buying is cheaper than building. You have to put a money value on your time. I put a money value on my time of 100 euros an hour. And if I say, okay, if I build that, it's going to take me 8 hours. That means that's costing $800. If I can buy it for cheaper than $800, then I will buy it. So yeah, for things like authentication, logging, libraries, UI libraries, themes for websites, framework, like material design for Angular or that sort of stuff. If there's something out there and it's a paid product, then it's almost certainly going to be cheaper to buy it than build it, and at least to get your initial product out there. Once your product is done and you've got 1.0 out, if something in there is costing you a lot of money to run, then you can always go, okay, now maybe I will look at a cheaper way of implementing that. But to get up and running, buying things off the shelf is very often the right answer if you can afford it. Set up continuous integration as early as possible and have it running your tests, and check in code as often as possible so that those tests can run, and set it up so that you get alerts sent through to your email or a text message, or I haven't quite got to the point of saying here's a Slack. Don't set up a Slack for your solo product development. That would be weird. Don't do that. But yes, your continuous integration tells you how you're doing, and it's lovely getting pings that just go, hey, you did a check-in and all your tests passed. And so yes, but you're going to need it working at some point in the future. If you set it up while your product is still simple, then it will be easier to maintain it and keep it as the product becomes more complicated and has more moving parts and so forth. And logging. Right from the start, make sure that your application is logging to some sort of logging abstraction. So if you're using .NET, then if you're doing .NET Core, then the built-in logging extensions or Serilog, or if you're using a different platform, then I don't know, but you know, you can use things like Datadog and New Relic. It's quite expensive, but you know, it needs to be writing to some kind of log. Once this thing gets out there and people start using it, then you're going to want the log messages coming in saying, oh, an exception happened, or an error happened, or just a feature was used. So put the logging code in as you go along, rather than building the product and then going, and now I will add logging, because that's a week of your life that you will hate, trust me. As well as being the programmer, assuming that you're product is not just an API, and if it is an API, then well done, you're very lucky, and have fun with that. But for most products, they're going to have some sort of user interface and user experience, and so you're going to need a designer hat as well. And one important note for the designer hat is, Steve Jobs said this: good artists copy, great artists steal. Steve Jobs actually said that Picasso said it, but Picasso never said it. And I try and keep my slides accurate. And I think probably everyone here thinks that Steve Jobs is more important than Picasso anyway. But yes, that is a great quote. When it comes to design, if you are a visual person, if you are an aesthetic person, that's fantastic, and go for it. Build something that looks amazing and original. But if you're like me and you're just a programmer and you don't really know why that blue's better than that blue, then just go out and find where somebody has used a blue that you like and nick it, and just copy things. And you know, at some point in the future, you're going to do a redesign anyway. Once the product's made its first £1 million, then you can hire a designer and they will come in and tut and say, let's make this look nice, shall we? So with your designer hat on, first thing to do is research similar products. So there's nothing that you are making that could be so original that there's nothing out there like it. So take a look at the similar products, the competition, look how they work, see what works in the way they do things, and also see what you think, oh, that would be better if you find a similar product and it's ugly and it looks like a Windows 95 application made in Visual Basic 6, then imagine what it would look like if you remade it in UWP and look at the themes for UWP. But if there's a product out there that just looks fantastic, then look at what they're doing and try and break it down into sort of, okay, so they're using this and they're doing that and the spacing's like this, white spaces, lots of white space or not so much white space. So yeah, research similar products and then make yours look better. Keep it simple. Again, unless you know all the CSS incantations to get the animations working and all this sort of stuff, to start off with, nice, clean, simple interface is much nicer than a complicated interface. The first version of Visual ReCode that I shipped to people actually had an interface with 2 list boxes where you dragged things between them, because I thought that would be a good idea. And they just went, no, that's a terrible idea, Mark. Please, please, please get rid of that and just do a list of things with checkboxes beside them, and we can choose the ones that we want that way. And so I did, and it was much better, and it was about 1/10 of the code. So keep things as simple as possible in the early stages. Just the simplest thing that you can make work. Be consistent. So make sure that window A and window B look roughly the same, the spacing's the same, that sort of thing. Consistency in design is more important than things like fonts and shapes and colors and so forth. It doesn't matter what color you use, as long as you always use the same color for that type of thing. So your success, your commit button should always be the same shade of green. It should always be the same size and the same shape and have the same font on it. And your text boxes should always be the same height and so forth. Consistency across the product is incredibly important in design terms. Every now and then, take a full build version of your product and sit down and pretend that you've never seen it before and you don't know how it works, and you need to figure it out. And if from looking at it, it's not immediately obvious what to do, then you need to fix it, because we don't ship manuals anymore. We don't really have help buttons. When was the last time you clicked a help button? The only help I ever do is putting the cursor on a word in Visual Studio and pressing F1. So yes, pretend you're coming to it completely fresh. And if it's not obvious how to use it, then make it obvious how to use it. If you have a design, like my two list boxes with drag and drop between them, and it doesn't work, don't try and make it work. Don't tweak it and fiddle with it and think, if I could just just throw it away and try something else. Trust me, if it doesn't work, you're never going to make it work, and you will just lose hours of time fiddling with it, and then eventually you'll just throw it away and you will do something simpler that works better. Okay, next hat, tester and QA. So you are going to be the tester and quality assurance person for your product as well, which is even more fun. And so you need to work out how that's going to work. And the most important thing in all of the testing things that I can possibly say is, if you can automate it, automate it. So there are types of testing that are really difficult to automate. UI testing is notoriously hard. Automating, go to this web page, type this text into this field, type this text into this field, click this button, make sure we now go to this web page. It is an absolute pain in the backside, and I hate it. Do you know what's worse? Manually testing that same thing over and over and over again. So take the hit, take the pain, and build an automated test suite at the highest level you possibly can. Functional testing, where you test end to end with the databases in place and the cloud services in place and everything else in place. Functional testing, if you do it right, will give you 90-odd% test coverage. If you do unit testing, test-driven development is great when you don't know how to write a particular function. But apart from that, unit testing is basically pointless. Integration testing can be useful in some situations, but functional testing, if you only have one kind of testing, it should be functional testing. I've just refactored the complicated bit of Visual ReCode out into a standalone .NET 5 gRPC application, and the Visual Studio extension talks to it. And now my test suite is almost entirely proper MVC ASP.NET Core tests with the gRPC service running in memory and API calls being made against it, and checking outputs and checking that things are generated correctly and so forth. It's very, very high level. And so then all I have to do is make sure that the buttons in Visual Studio are calling the right things on the gRPC service, and I can be pretty sure that it's working. And those tests run every time the thing is checked into source control. Don't forget the unhappy path. This is not just solo product development, but it's much easier to do it in solo product development, to forget that bad things are going to happen. And so you need to test what happens to your code in the cases where the bad things happen. If it tries to open a solution and it can't open it, what's it going to do about that? Is it going to log something somewhere useful so that you can diagnose what went wrong? So yes, make sure that your high-level functional tests break things occasionally, and get those tested as well, and make sure that your system copes with it. Make sure that you're testing, so if you're building a website, then you need to test it in Chrome and Firefox and the various other Chromium browsers, but more importantly, you need to test it on Macs with Safari, because plenty of things that work on proper web browsers on proper computers don't work on Macs in Safari. If it's targeting mobile, then make sure that you're testing it on actual mobile devices. Get your friends to lend you their Android phone if you've got an iPhone, or vice versa. Try and get people to test it on tablets. If you're doing a web application, there's a great web browser called Blisk, which actually shows the different form factors, and so you get the different media layouts and so forth, which is brilliant for sort of quick and dirty local testing, but it's not a replacement for actually testing on the specific hardware. When you are testing your manual testing on devices and everything else, make sure you are testing the release build. So hitting F5 in Visual Studio or Control-Shift-B in IntelliJ or whatever in debug mode, that's not testing the product that your customers are going to be using. So make a release build. I have a continuous integration process that at the end spits out an MSI installer file. My manual testing process involves downloading that installer from the Azure DevOps server, spinning up a virtual machine that I've got set up perfectly with a checkpoint so that I can reset it, installing the software, and then going through my tests on that machine. I'm quite lucky. This is a Visual Studio extension, so there's really just one platform that I have to test for. But you go through that process every time, because if you're not testing exactly the code that your customers are testing in exactly the environment that they are going to be using it in, then you're not really testing it at all. Test everything every time. This is painful experience. I had a bug in Visual ReCode, and so I fixed the bug, and I tested that I had fixed the bug, and then I pushed it because I was in a hurry because the customer wanted a new build that would fix it. And somehow, and I still don't really know how, but fixing one of the changes that I made, and I think it might have been a NuGet package upgrade that just happened by the side, broke something else in one other part of the product, and I hadn't tested that because I was in a hurry and I wanted to get the new release to the customer. So it is painful, but when you're manually testing, test everything every single time. On the plus side, testing is something that you could train somebody else to do potentially, and so you might be able to get some help with that from a friend or a family member if you ask very, very nicely and buy chocolates and flowers and things. Okay, marketing. There is a belief among a lot of developers about marketing, which they got from Kevin Costner in Field of Dreams. They believe that if you build it, they will come. And this is not true. This is bollocks. And you should not believe that. If you build it, they won't know, and they won't care. And if you build it and you tell them, then they'll know, but they still won't care. You have to do marketing. It is important. You need to build awareness and make people excited about your product. So actually, maybe you should have mentioned this at the start. You did do your market research, right? There is a market for the thing that you're building. This is something that people need. You have sort of talked to people about it. I've spoken to people before and they said, oh, I didn't want to mention it to anybody because I thought they might steal my idea. They're not going to steal your idea. They've got their own ideas. They've got their own things they're working on. So I started talking about, is it possible to automatically convert a WCF application to a gRPC application straight away? I started blogging about it. I started making a noise about it. I created a mailing list just to see how many people would sign up to a mailing list about it. I checked the stats on a website I created called unwcf.com to see how many hits it was getting. The answer was a lot. So yes, make sure that you have established that a market exists for your product and that it's worth spending all that time and effort building. And then as soon as you've decided that you're going to build it, that's when your marketing should start. You should be saying to people, I'm building this. You should be blogging about it. You should be tweeting about it. I'm actually not great at this. I do some, but I need to do more. But yes, you need to, as soon as you have committed to making this product, that's when the marketing effort starts. That's when the website should go up with coming soon and sign up here for updates and all that sort of thing. If you're on social media, then make noise on social media. Raid hashtags that are relevant to your product and sort of go, oh, I've just finished this feature on this product I'm working on, the hashtag Kotlin game development or whatever it might be. Don't spam hashtags that are nothing to do with your product. So don't go putting, hey, I've released version 2 of my brilliant washing machine simulator, hashtag Biden 2020. That's not good and people will not like you. Create a blog. So you know the journal that I talked about for keeping track of your time and what you've done over the course of a week? Why not make that public? Why not make that a public blog so that people can follow along and feel personally invested? This is something that you'll see game developers doing a lot. Indie game developers really involve their social following with what they're working on, and they talk about it and they post screenshots and animated GIFs. Go to the hashtag GameDev tag on Twitter and see these guys talking about what they're doing. And that's what you need to be doing, is by just building a mass of people who, by the time the product is actually released, are going to be going, yeah, it's finally out. I can get it on wherever it might be, the Windows Store or the App Store or Steam Early Access or anything. But yeah, blogging, tweeting, all those things to build a community while you're developing the product. If you can outsource marketing or partner with somebody, that is actually what I'm doing with Visual ReCode. So Visual ReCode is marketed and sold by Gibraltar Software, who already have a couple of products in the .NET Visual Studio space. So they're taking care of most of that. That was great because it means I don't have to worry about building cool looking websites or paying for Intercom or HubSpot or any of those things that you need, because it turns out, if that's not an option, that marketing costs money. You are going to have to spend money to have a proper marketing effort. You're going to need to spend money on analytics for your website, so you know where people are coming from, how long they're staying, what the bounce rate is. You're also going to have to buy a marketing book so you can understand what any of those things mean and why they're important. You're going to need a mailing list. MailChimp works for this, and that is at least free. But you can get more advanced mailing list solutions like landing pages, which will actually let you design a page that's just for people to sign up to a mailing list, which do cost money. CRM tools, HubSpot is probably the main one here, which also includes some analytics. HubSpot is about $99 a month, but if you can afford it, it is totally worth it. And then you're going to have to spend money on advertising as well. Whether that's some Google AdWords, whether it's promoted tweets on Twitter, you know where most of the people that your product is targeted at are hanging out. Try and find out what sort of advertising you can afford and where you're going to get the best bang for the buck. And again, if you're on Twitter or Stack Overflow or somewhere like that, you can ask questions. Ask other people what they use and what works for them. But you are going to have to spend some money if you're going to get your marketing campaign working properly. Speaking of marketing, if I mentioned Visual ReCode, it's a product that adds into Visual Studio, and it currently will convert WCF applications to gRPC. The version that's releasing alongside .NET 5 in the middle of November will also upgrade ASP.NET Web API applications to ASP.NET Core MVC applications. So that's cool. Sales, yes. Hilarious. The worst thing with sale, pricing is hard. Getting the price right is very, very difficult. My first product, one of the reasons it failed was it was too cheap. It was ridiculous. And it was costing me more to host it in the cloud than I was making. For pricing, it is better to start too high and then discount. If you say, this is going to be 500 euros or 499 euros and 99 cents. And people go, oh, that's a bit steep. Then you can say, all right, I'll put it on sale as a launch special. It's 50% off. And then you've got your you've set your top price, but go high, go with a high price and then discount for special occasions. You should be like a sofa shop. The actual price never gets charged. It's always on sale. It's always a discount, and the sale is always ending next week. But it can be very difficult when you've built something. Certainly, I know for British people, it's difficult to go, yes, that's worth £500 or that's worth £1,000, and put it out there. We sort of go, oh no, it's little old me. I shouldn't be charging that. I should make it cheap. No, go high. And look back over your journal, look back over how much time you spent on this, look at all those hours that you recorded and say, okay, so I've spent 2,000 hours building this thing. And if I sell 1,000 copies, or if I sell 2,000 copies, then each one of those copies needs to pay for one of those hours. So if I said my time is worth 100 euros an hour, then that's the price of the product. And then double it, okay? And then discount it. Make it easy to buy the product. I swear to God, I'm not going to name it, but the other day I wanted to buy something and I could not figure out how to give this person money. And it was a nightmare. It just could not find on their website the bit where you actually have to give them money. and it turned out it was hidden in the about box of the thing that was actually installed. And that was the only way you could buy a license for this software. Do not put the only link to your sales page in the about box. For people never look at the about box on your software. So yes, you should have big buy now buttons on every possible thing. If you have a trial mode, then every time it starts up, it should pop up a thing going, hey, do you like it? It's time to buy it. And that sales process, outsourced to Shopify or to Stripe or to somebody. There are lots of providers out there with very reasonable rates, and they will make buying your product or buying a subscription to your product as easy as possible. If it's easy to buy, people will give you their money. If it's hard to buy, then if they won't, unless they're like me and they really try very, very hard. Very important. Sell what you've got today, not what you're building tomorrow. So it's fine to say this is coming soon, but what you are actually selling, what you are actually advertising, and what you are actually charging for is the functionality that it has today. So Visual ReCode currently costs an amount of money. One of the things that we're pushing in our marketing effort is we're adding a new feature, and the price is going to go up because of the new feature. But if you buy it now, you get the new feature for free. But make sure that you're not selling promises. This is a thing that sales teams in companies often do, and it's a nightmare, and everybody hates them for it. So sell what you have, and if it's not ready, don't start selling it. Just put a beta out there, put a preview out there. But yeah, don't say, oh, next week it's going to do this, so buy it now. And stay in touch with your customers. Once somebody has given you their money, they are now one of your best friends. You need to be staying in touch with them. If they don't mind, and if they say it's okay, and if they tick the box, send them a weekly newsletter or a bi-weekly newsletter. That's every other week, not twice a week. Just saying, hey, we've got this, or this has happened, or we've reached 1,000 customers even. Your early customers will feel very invested, and if you're a small startup thing, then they'll like to hear the news, even if it's not particularly important to them. And the ones who don't care and the ones who don't want to hear the news will just click the unsubscribe thing. So HubSpot and MailChimp and most of these marketing tools that you're paying for will have quite often a sort of way to set up a series of emails. So send this when they start a trial, send this when their trial's about to expire, send this when it has expired. But you can also send a weekly newsletter. But yeah, keeping in touch with those customers, reminding them that they are a customer, reminding them, keeping the idea of your software, because it may be something that sits in the background and they've forgotten about it. How often do you think about Dropbox? Dropbox just sits there, or Backblaze, which does my backups for me. So stay in touch, make sure you're popping up in their email inbox if they will let you, is very important. On that note, support. You are also going to have to support this software. This is a nightmare. You mean I wrote the software, I designed the software, I invented the software, I marketed the software, I've sold the software, and now I've got to talk to the people who are breaking the software? Why? So yes, but you do. You have to support it, and it is really important to make time for this. So as soon as you've got software out there in the world, your schedule, your routine, everything else, you have to build in. So if you say, okay, I work on this for 20 hours a week, then you have to say, I'm guessing that somewhere from 2.5 to 5 hours a week are going to be spent doing support and fixing things. And so you need to build that into your estimate of how long things are going to take in the future. So make time, plan time up front for that support so that you can do that, and so that you can respond to support questions or bugs. Generally within 24 hours is acceptable to most people, if you're a small business, but the quicker you can reply and say, thanks for letting me know I'm on it, the better. Don't just ignore them. You may have their money, but if you have their money and you don't support them, then they will be telling other people that you don't support your customers. There are lots of channels for this. You can have a ticketing system, so Zendesk or user voice, that sort of thing. Ideally, you should make sure that your customers have your personal email address so that they can email you directly. And what I have in Outlook is all those customers who have my email address are in a list, and they all get moved into a specific folder. So they are customer emails, not so that I can ignore them, actually so that I can go, crap, there are important emails that I need to read, and not all this spam from various companies who think it's important to stay in touch with their customers. You can also set up a forum, and this is where you can create a Slack. So you can have a Slack for your users, especially when you're just starting up. Having something like a Slack or a Discord for your early adopters is really helpful. It's a great way to stay in touch with them. And if they need if they're asking questions, you can respond to it quickly, which is why I've got Slack on that screen there most of the time, because people drop in and go, oh, does this not work? And I go, oh, because I'm useless. And I'll fix it, and it's on my list. But yes, and Slack, Discord are basically free. It's up to you which you want to use. Slack makes it easier to control, so you can sort of go, hey, thanks for signing up for my software. Would you like me to add you to the Slack? And then you've got their email address and you can just add them in. And also have a Twitter account just for your product as well, so that people can talk to your Twitter account and you can retweet it and it can retweet you and that sort of thing. And then finally, questions. So if someone has a support issue and it's just a question and there's a simple answer to it, then answer the question and then immediately add that to your documentation, whether that's in an FAQ or just the general documentation. The best way to build your documentation is in response to the questions that actual customers have asked. And then it won't stop other customers asking the same question, but it does make the answer simpler. And I'm not saying RTFM, but hi, that's covered in our documentation. Here's a link. And then finally, customer relations, that CRM system again. So this is the thing about staying in touch, regular communication. Keep talking to your customers, ask them for honest feedback. If they've got bad things to say about the product, then that's good. That can help you make it better. If they've got nice things to say about your product, then ask if you can just put that as an anonymous quote on your website or something like that. But yeah, let them feel like you want to hear from them and that their opinions matter to you. Partnering, I have said this before. Visual ReCode is sold by Gibraltar Software. CodeRush, the ReSharper competitor, is sold by DevExpress, but it's basically a solo effort that's built by Mark Miller. He builds the whole thing on his own, and DevExpress take care of all the sales and marketing. If you know somebody who runs a company, I was lucky, I know Kendall Miller who runs Gibraltar, and I said, hey, do you want to sell this? Because I can't. But if you know somebody who has a software company or somebody who has some kind of experience, then the sales, support, marketing, customer relations is a fantastic thing to have somebody else working with you. And also partnering with somebody means that you are responsible to somebody else. And so now they've got deadlines, you're making them promises, which is a great way to keep yourself motivated. Speaking of motivation, before you start, ask yourself, do I really, really, really want to build this? Do I really think this needs to exist? Do I really want to be the one who makes this? Because this is going to be hard. Actually building a product end to end, vertical slice by vertical slice, is rough. It's hard. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of discipline. So if you're not really committed to it, then, you know, maybe just build the prototype and see how you feel after having built the prototype. But yeah, eventually something will come along where you're going, oh no, that's it. That's the thing that I really have to build. For me, it was Visual ReCode because I hated WCF that much. And so that was, I'm going to kill it. But yes, give yourself rewards for achieving milestones. I buy Xbox games. And then I say, I can't play that Xbox game until I have completed this thing. So getting version 1 out, I was then allowed to play Resident Evil 7. When I get version 2 version 2 is just going into beta, but version 2 will be fully released alongside .NET 5. And then I'll be able to allow to play the Resident Evil 2 remake. My rewards are heavily Resident Evil based because they're really awesome games. But yes, set yourself a reward and then don't give yourself that reward until you have achieved that milestone. Make it as easy as possible to start. So I have my computer is basically it's never switched off. At the worst, it's in sleep mode, and I can wake it up in 2 seconds, sit down and start coding. If you have to open a laptop, find somewhere to put the laptop and plug a mouse in and all this sort of stuff, it's really difficult. That you wouldn't believe it, but that makes it so much harder to get started. So having somewhere permanent, a chair that you can just sit down in and start doing something, make it as easy as possible to get to the point where you are working. Once you're working, it's fine. You're there. It's just, oh no, I have to get the laptop out of the bag and open it up and then find the charger and everything. Oh, I'll do it after lunch. So yeah, make it as easy as possible to start. If things go wrong, please just don't beat yourself up. Things are going to go wrong. You're going to fail. You're going to have a weekend where you meant to do amazing things, but actually you woke up on Saturday morning and you just couldn't face it. And so you spent the entire weekend sitting on the couch and binging Netflix, and not even something good on Netflix, just like Lucifer or something like that. It's going to happen, and it's fine, and it's your subconscious. It's taking care of you. It knows that you're struggling and that you need a break. And so don't beat yourself up if you miss a day here or there, or if you miss a milestone or anything like that. Just go, right, fine, tomorrow is another day. I will pick up and we will start again. And that is probably the most important thing of all. Do you use tools for time management? I use Toggle. Toggle is brilliant. It sits there in your system tray, and you hotkey it up and you say, I've just done this and it took this long. And so yes, I actually started using it. It was the way a customer that I was doing freelance work for was tracking time as well. But Toggle. Did you ever burn out? Yes. I didn't actually burn out working on a solo project. I burned out working for a company. I ended up doing 100 hours a week for probably about 4 or 5 months. And I burned out hard. I burned out to the point where I was in a mental hospital for 6 weeks. And then off work, an outpatient at the mental hospital for 6 weeks. And then gradual return to work, sort of going in sort of 1 morning and then 3 mornings and then 3 full days. And then when I finally got back to full time, they said, oh, you missed your performance review and we gave you the worst possible grade because you've had so much time off. And so I quit. So yes, I'm very aware of the signs of burnout and feeling tense, feeling like you've got loads of energy, feeling like I could take on the world and I could go for a run and I've just got so many ideas and I don't need to sleep. I can work till 3 o'clock and wake up again at 6 o'clock and carry on working. That's burnout. That's your brain. My psychiatrist calls it running hot. It's your limbic system has gone into meltdown and is flooding your brain with chemicals because you're stuck in fight or flight mode. And so yes, and if you get that, I swear to God, just take some time off, and get a good week's sleep or something. I also meditate. I use Headspace to do guided meditations, which is incredibly helpful. Do you take breaks when switching hats, or do you just get used to it? You just get used to it. You just, when I'm wearing my product manager, when I'm doing different tasks, I think in different ways. So actually, when I review my own PRs, I go through my pull requests And when I'm going through my pull requests, I'm wearing my product manager and project manager hats going, was this the thing I was supposed to be working on? So yeah, as you're doing different things, you need to get used to having these different voices in your head, these different ways of looking at things, lenses. That's a popular thing, isn't it? I should have called them lenses. Then this could have been a whole methodology and I could sell it. Damn. Oh, now I told you my idea and you're all going to steal it. So yes, but yeah, it's mainly a matter of thinking in different ways when you're doing different things. Do you also create the test cases and test your app? Yes, I do. With mine, it's quite complicated because it's a Visual Studio plugin that is actually, it's easy to use, but it's hard to understand what it's doing if your degree is in history and politics and your master's is in creative writing. So my wife cannot test my software for me. But yeah, if you can get someone else to do it, then get someone else to do it and get them to really try and break it. How many people signed up to my mailing list? I think we had, it was a few hundred off the UNWCF and everything else. Yeah, it was, we didn't even push it particularly. It was just linked off websites and blogs and things like that. And then, yeah, that gave us sort of a good idea that it was worth working on. What is your approach on advertising? It needs to get better, basically. It's advertising, it's finding where is the best place to advertise. If you're making a tool for developers, then Stack Overflow is obviously a great place to advertise, but it's really expensive. If you're making something more general purpose, then Google, but on Google, you've got a lot of competition. Promoted tweets on Twitter, if your target customers, you know, it's, like I say, I'm partnering with somebody else and they take care of most of the advertising and they just say to me, hey, we're going to spend this much money on these things. Are you okay with that? And I say, yes. And we have a thing where for each sale, I take 30%, they take 30%, and 40% pays down the advertising and marketing budgets and everything else. Think about using a customer satisfaction system, e.g. NPS. I don't know what NPS is. We use Intercom as a sort of way of staying in touch with our customers and measuring satisfaction that way. And we have a feedback button in the app, which takes you to the Intercom page so that you can put stuff in there. But I don't think we've got a formal kind of customer satisfaction system like a red, green, blue, or happy face, sad face, or anything. How long did you work on prototyping before switching to product mode? I think it was a solid month of evenings when I was just burying myself away, or sometimes working on my laptop while pretending to watch police procedurals on Sky One with my wife. But yeah, it was a good long time. And it was basically long enough to make sure that it could be done and that it was hard enough that it was going to be worth people paying money for. Because it's kind of like, if Rosalind makes this really easy, then why are people going to pay me just for wrapping it up with a bow? So if I'd prototyped it in a couple of evenings, then it probably would never have turned into a product, and I probably would have open sourced it. Getting it to work was really complicated. But yeah, that can vary. But I would say part-time a month, full-time a month of evenings, and full-time maybe 2 or 3 weeks to build a prototype that you're going to then throw away and use as a learning experience. How many side projects have you abandoned before launching one? I've lost count. So there was the side product that I abandoned after I launched it, which we just couldn't sell, and which now is built into the Azure portal. So, you know, glad I never got to depend on that one. Don't compete with Microsoft. That's a really good tip. Don't build something that Microsoft might build themselves. He said, building a Visual Studio plugin for upgrading .NET code. But at the moment, Microsoft are actually recommending us to customers. Well, I've got this WS code. Oh, have you seen this? Other side project, I've put it this way. I own 58 domain names. I'm a firm believer in domain-driven development. Buy a catchy sounding domain and then try and build a product that matches it. So yeah, a lot. Most of them just don't get past the prototype stage. Some of them get sort of, hey, there's a finished prototype. I hate it. I'm not doing it anymore. So yeah, the difference was with ReCode in particular. I was just kind of like, I believe this can be done, and I believe that I can eliminate WCF and maybe even .NET 4. Everything from the face of the planet, or I can at least push people in that direction. And I think that's a valid thing to do. And I also think the people who have this problem are massive enterprises for whom anything less than $100,000 is pocket change. So yes, we've just shipped a preview of it to IBM India, and hoping they're going to buy an enterprise license. So yes. But yeah, that was the difference. It was, I think it's valuable. I think I honestly, saying I think I can make developers' lives better sounds like cheesy and nonsense. But if there are developers out there maintaining the kind of web forms application I spent today banging my head against, I can't do anything about web forms. But WCF, Web API, maybe even MVC, WCF, WinForms, if I can get them off the old .NET and onto the nice new one, that makes their lives better. And if in the course of doing that, the people who employ them give me thousands of dollars, then everybody's happy.